Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for this pre-noon show today in studio with a very important topic. We'd like to thank artist Dominic Esposito coming in to talk about putting his big spoon in front of Purdue Pharma in conjunction with gallery owner Fernando Luis Alvarez from Stanford. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kate.
I appreciate your coming in to
here.
talk about this. Again, happened back in June, bringing attention to the role that Purdue has had in the opioid epidemic here in the country in such a unique way. Now, had the opportunity from Dominic's standpoint when he envisioned having this spoon bring the attention to it, but clearly the collaboration between the two of you, because as a gallery owner, you already had in the works this opioid exhibit.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that and the intersection of you and Dominic and what's happened since.
Well, I think, a lot of it begins with the mission statement of the gallery. Since we opened in 2009, what we wanted to do was not sell art, but create a platform to help community and help artists' careers. So that's where it all begins,
Okay.
But from like approximately 2 years ago to now, I was reading a lot about the opioid epidemic, and I'm looking at the staggering numbers, and I'm just in awe of how, in this time of age, tens of thousands of people are dying, and no one's moving the needle. So I said, you know what? With the little that we have here, let's do a show on this. And it was very controversial because I actually sit on a board with somebody who's very close to the Sackler family in Stamford, Connecticut. And it was a big call for me to do that. It's a powerful board. I sit on a board with this woman. And Stamford is very protective of Purdue Pharma. And I said, you know what, we're going to do it. So we came up with the name of the show, Opioid Express Yourself, and we worked on it, for approximately 13 months or so. And then in the final stages of it, we were blessed by, through a friend of ours, Dominic and I met, and it was a phenomenal encounter. It turns out that while we were working on this, he had already been going through as a victim, because when these companies go in poison and rewire the brain of a human being with these drugs, they're also destroying homes. And Dominic's influence on the spoon came from the many spoons that his mom would find in the house. And seeing his brother go through what he was going through, and fighting, and trying to fight. And then eventually this phenomenal idea he came up with, which is a spoon. And I think we were just really, truly meant to be together as one.
And so we talked a little bit about the unveiling of the spoon that day, and you knowing what could possibly happen, dumping an 800-pound spoon in front of one of the largest pharma facilities in the country. Talk with us a little bit about that day. Were you braced for it? Was a protest measure.
Indeed, but it was more than that. We knew it would start a movement, and we wanted it to start a movement. And the simplicity of this tagging along with it, the whole concept of the right accountability, which is what this is all about. And we say right accountability is because civil suits do not work. It brings you nowhere. Because what it is it's like a Band-Aid fix. It fixes it right now. But in the future, it doesn't. Because the very same people who are creating these irresponsible drugs and products that are harming society and thus killing tens of thousands of people, in this case, hundreds of thousands of people, are not being prosecuted the way a typical drug dealer would. I think is an adequate description of who this family is and their company is and their entire, from the board down. So, it was important for us to actually put that out there and educate people that the spoon, whenever they see the spoon, they remember right accountability. And that is what we're getting America to push for, the right type of accountability. We have to put these people behind bars, because if we don't, if you look at the rate of epidemics, they started in the 1950s, probably before that, but we'll start from the 1950s to now. It was the tobacco companies. They lied, okay? They lied, and look what happened. A lot of people died of cancer. It made it the #1 cancer victim country in the world. Then 25 to 29 years later, in the 70s, was the food companies. Look what happened to America. It made us the most unhealthy country in the world. Cancer, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, you name it. And then approximately 20, 25 years later, in the late 80s, they started pushing, the Sacklers in particular, started pushing the whole concept of opioids. Doctors were afraid to do that. They didn't want to do that because they knew it was up to 50 times or 100 times, 50 times stronger than morphine, which was given to people at stage 4. And what these people wanted to do was give it to anybody. You have a toothache? Hey, here. Anything, you know. So they killed a lot of people.
So, you know, you mentioned being on the board with a member of the Sackler family and the influence of Purdue and Sackler in Connecticut and around the country. And I was talking with Dominic, you know, we've reported here at Go Local contributions from the Sackler family to a number of elected officials, including the governor. Now, the response from her office was, well, that doesn't influence my decision. She's been very out front, like many elected officials are trying to combat the opioid epidemic. Is that hard to rectify the two?
Absolutely. I think it's a conflict of interest. I think is the epitome of cynicism when politicians take money and they turn around and, you know, they're literally talking to you in the crowd in front of you to serve you as their duty is, while they're taking money in the back pocket from these corporations. It's absolutely a conflict of interest. And of course they're going to have to fight it, but ask her whenever you interview her next, if she believes these people should go to jail. What is she doing to hold these people accountable and put them behind bars? Tell them about what we're doing, okay? And our logic, and I'd love to go on a debate with her if I have to. Really, I mean, because I think it's just the epitome of cynicism. They're pretty much standing in front of the American people and saying, you guys are a bunch of idiots. That's what they're doing. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people are dying. And the most sacred thing that any nation has is the home. And they're destroying homes along the way.
Well, one of the things that Go Local reported and pointed out that has been in national press lately is the facility here in Rhode Island, Rhodes Technology, with the the close connection to Purdue. So continuing to ask elected officials, including the governor, again, about taking the money from the Sackler family. Now let's talk about what's happened since June, since you had the exhibit this past month as well. Talk with us about the reaction both to that day outside Purdue. I think I saw the report from the police that they called it like something like obstructing a pathway, and it was, you know, it's big, it's 800 pounds, but
which it was.
You know,
it was obstructing the driveway.
You know, it was a small obstruction, if you will. What
Right.
did you hear that day from folks? You know, Dominic spoke to getting messages from folks all over the world in the recovery community, folks who've had
You know, what I remember the most was the stories that I was getting from, we couldn't sleep for the next 2 weeks. We would be up in the morning texting to each other with the emoji of crying and stuff like that, because the stories we heard, you know, I mean, there's just sad stories. You know, a 13-year-old girl goes into the doctor's office. The parents are away. He hands her, you know, 30 pills. Take one every whatever, so many hours. When the parents come back, the kid is completely a different person, rewired, addicted to this. And some families lost 3 of the kids, you know, and just for minor things, toothaches, you know, cramps, you know, you name it, you know, like minor things. You know, this is a drug that if it's up to 50 times stronger than morphine, which was only prescribed at stage 4 illnesses, you know, sort of for you to like enjoy your last weeks with your family or months. Why are we prescribing this for just any minor pain? You know, headaches, you know, toothaches, stomach aches, cramps, all this, you know, and that is what they created, and equally accountable. And this is why your governor should not be taking money from these people, are the politicians, because they're the ones who pass the laws. You know, so why are they taking money from this company after what we know they've done? They pleaded guilty in 2007. So it's like, okay, so it's okay to take money from them, but not from Pablo Escobar or Chapo in Mexico? It's the same thing. It's probably worse, because they're actually have sugar-coated it, and they have become so cynical.
Yeah.
And that to the point where some Americans have become complacent to this. But the time has come. There's no more crap for this. Americans are not going to put up with this anymore. They're going to stand up to these politicians, and they're going to start doing their own thing at their own reach. And that is including to get them not to take money from them and return their money, and just absolutely don't vote for people like that. Do your homework. If they, including this governor from this state, if she's running again, remember how many people Purdue Pharma and this company is associated in killing. And do not vote for her. Get her out of office. Call your friends.
Very powerful message. It is an election year. They just had a debate last night.
Perfect.
And we've had her hidden.
I'd love to have a debate with this lady. And I would love to come back here and do something, because I think she really needs to get put on in front of everybody on the record. And we need a better answer than what she's telling us. Americans are not stupid. We are fed up. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have died because of this. You should be ashamed of yourself, whoever your name is, ma'am. I haven't even looked it up. But you should be ashamed of yourself for what you're doing. Taking money from this company when tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, have been associated to their drug. You know, their lives have been associated to their drugs.
So here we have you today with Dominic here in Rhode Island. After coming up from Connecticut, you're clearly getting the word out there for this movement. Now, your day job is a gallery owner, and but how much is this going to take up of your time now? I mean, you're really impassioned about this.
Well, community is a big part of the gallery. All of our artists are involved in some form of community at their own reach. You know, they're building community wherever they show their work. They embrace community. The artists involved in this show, it's a phenomenal roster of artists. You know, in fact, we have a number of museums interested in the show, in the entire show.
Oh, fantastic.
I mean, the talent, the time that went into these guys, creating these works for this show, and the time that they put into it, that is a way of them communicating their message. Unfortunately, the Spoon took the entire attention from the media, but there's a lot more in there. I mean, talking about synergy, there's a lot of synergy in that show, and a lot to look into. And we know that over time, these artists, our artists in that show, will actually get their moment.
Fantastic. And I appreciate your coming in, because we've continued to report on this issue extensively here. Both Purdue, the Sackler family, and now Rhodes Technology has the patent for the antidote, which Dominic had his own vantage point on. What's your thoughts about that? There's a lot of messages out there, and don't all seem to be consistent from Purdue. I think folks of the more cynical nature are leery that they can somehow profit again off of this. They seem to be putting messages out of a nonprofit variety. But what's your sense when you heard this, that they were looking to, in fact, produce the antidote to the problem that they started?
When you look at the master plan, when you look into the master plan that they had already created to create this epidemic by enriching themselves, includes, I'm sure, their influence on, or the lobbyist group that was highly involved in taking away power from the DEA to prosecute the people who were actually pushing this, doctors and whatnot, and the distributors, When you look at the master plan, I wasn't surprised, okay? I wasn't surprised that, that they would come up with something like that, and it's just mind-boggling what they're doing. I mean, it's just the level of cynicism of these people not care about humanity and just to enrich themselves is the epitome of toxic money. And I just can't believe that they're actually doing that and be able to look at themselves in the mirror every night, And it was a plan. So they came up with the whole concept. Okay, let's get enough people, addicted to this drug. Obviously, it will, because we know we have the scientists here, And then we create the cure for it. I mean, how vicious is that? And we'll enrich themselves again on that. And with our lobbyist groups and our PR firms and the money we give to all these politicians and the money we give to all these nonprofits and educational institutions like Harvard I don't know if RISD gets any money from them, but maybe that's something for you guys to look
The
into.
Sackler Gallery up at Harvard.
Yeah, well, so, but I don't know if RISD gets money from them here, in Rhode Island. But that's whole part of the master plan. It's whole part. It was the curtain. They put their curtains up, so they go on and enrich themselves, which is really, really a shame.
And you're here to pull back the curtain along with Dominic and with the other artists as a part of this effort. I really appreciate your coming in because, as you said, got a lot of attention when you dropped that 800-pound spoon and you got that arrest there, but really to bring attention to it and now make it into something bigger. So I appreciate so much your coming in. Fernando Luis Alvarez with Fernando Luis Alvarez Gallery in Stamford. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've got places to go here in Rhode Island. We're going to be back in a little bit with the Noontime Show with Ray Rickman and Bob Wickham. So we look forward to seeing you back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.